Good morning, everybody. Like Don mentioned, my name's Aaron Butler. I'm the Senior Project Manager at Lofted Spirits, which is the umbrella company for Bardstown Bourbon Company and Green River Spirits. So I actually work at both sites. Bardstown Bourbon, of course, is in Bardstown, Kentucky. Green River Spirits is in Owensboro, Kentucky. I always like to kind of share a little bit about my background, because the fact that I'm standing in front of you today is actually kind of remarkable. I went to Purdue University expecting to study aerospace engineering. I graduated with a history degree from the University of Kentucky. So turns out that doesn't necessarily lead to a great career path. So I sold cars for 4 years, straight out of college, Kias too. And we're talking about late 2000s, buy one, get one free. I sold cars that had no AC, steel wheels. After I was done doing that, I went back to school and I got a master's in secondary education from the University of Kentucky, and thought that I wanted to teach high schoolers. That was terrible for a variety of reasons. Number one, I really like history. They do not care one bit. Two, hope there's no administrators in the room. That's a rough one. And then three, parents are terrible. And I'm a parent of four, so awful, absolutely awful. So why not go back to school again? So I have my MBA from the University of Louisville, and I worked at Caesars, what formerly was Horseshoe, now Caesars Southern Indiana. Started off there doing data analytics. Obviously, my history background led right into that one. So it made all the sense in the world that that's what you would throw to me. So I did data analytics for a while, and then eventually I became Director of Business and Process Improvement. And if you have not been to the new casino over there, the one that used to be the Boat, right? Everybody refers to it as the Boat. That $90 million construction over there, I was in charge of all of that. I had no construction background. We had 4 project managers quit, and they said, hey, do you mind stepping in? You're gonna be a fly on the wall. Next thing you know, I was making every decision there. So got reached out to from Bardstown Bourbon Company. I was expecting, since they were in constant expansion, that I would lead construction projects. And they said, how would you like to do ERP and AI? It's like, awesome, sure I can figure that out, right? So that's what I'm gonna talk to you about today. I'm gonna talk to you kind of about our journey, because it is also my journey, so I take it very personal. But I'm also gonna talk to you about our brand, so I hope you all don't mind. I'm assuming we have some bourbon fans in the audience, correct? Just a few? Okay. So really our story, Bardstown Bourbon Company, we want to be on the forefront. So company was founded in 2014, relatively new brand. The vision of our founder, Pete Lofton, was to bring bourbon to the masses, allow any individual to actually invest in bourbon. And at the same time, we wanted to build great bourbon brands. Our motto is there's no place that we will not go. If you look at some of our collaborations and some of the work that we do, we have a variety of different collaborations with different, like whether it's Curacao, we use rum finishes, we use cask finishes like wine cask finishes. We'll do just about anything, okay? Marketing always likes me to show that slide. So if you see anybody from our marketing team, tell them I showed it. I didn't really talk to it, but. So founded in 2014, our production began in 2016. Roughly 20,000 barrels a year was our capacity. Following that, we released our first product. First product was the Discovery Series, and then we also, our Collaborative Series, and then we did Discovery Infusion. One of the unique things about our business, most people, the biggest outlay of capital to build a bourbon brand is building the buildings, right? Costs a lot of money to actually build a still house. What we decided to do that was different from the rest of the industry is, instead of funding that by doing white liquor, whether it was vodka, gin, you'll see a lot of bourbon companies, that's what they'll release first. We built on our customers. So we are a contract distiller. So roughly 80% of what we produce is not even ours, okay? So we use our customers' money to help fund the growth of our brands. Our initial series were all based off of bourbons that we purchased from other people, and we created, blended in a unique way to build up our brands while we waited for ours to age. That is the hardest part to build a bourbon brand. You have to wait for it to age a while, right? Let's be honest, good stuff, it's gonna be at least 4 years. So just personal opinion, 4 years or more is pretty much the minimum. We were waiting 6 years. And then in 2022, we were purchased by a private equity firm out of Chicago, Pritzker Private Capital. Probably recognize the last name. The governor of Illinois, it's his brother, okay? So they purchased us in 2022. From there forward, we had rapid expansion. So the 20,000 barrels that we did early on, we added an additional 16 fermenters, followed by 8, followed by 16, followed by 16. Our capacity now, as of this moment, we could do between 210 and 270,000 barrels a year. We were one of the largest individual distilleries, not by total volume if you include all of them, but individual sites in the nation. The other part that makes us unique, on average, a single distillery will make 4 mash bills per year. We make 70. So we run a bunch of different stuff. And the reason I'm telling you all this is now you can imagine how much data we actually have laying in that background, right? We purchased an additional 300 acres just across the street from us about a year and a half, 2 years ago, just so we could expand rick houses. So we have 21 rick houses that hold 750,000 barrels at the present moment on our site. Would anybody like to guess where all of those barrels are being located and watched at? What do you think? What system do you think we're monitoring those in? Excel. So let me tell you why I have my phone sitting close to me. We are getting ready to, as Don mentioned, implement an ERP. That is my project. It goes live in 11 days. I agreed to do this back in February. It was pretty hard to sell to my CEO today to say, hey, I'm coming up here. I was like, I agreed to this a long time ago, I'm gonna come. But we're getting ready to do that now. The Excel file that we had to upload in the new ERP was 500 megabytes. Took 80 hours to upload. Of the 750,000, we had 1,200 errors, which is amazing. Each one of those barrels is tracked on a spreadsheet, and we go out each year individually and count all of them. I don't know if you've ever been in a rick house. It doesn't have electricity. It doesn't have AC, nor does it have heat. So it's better to go in the wintertime with a headlamp on and your spreadsheet in hand, and we walk up and down the aisles with a headlamp on and write them off. 750,000 barrels. We've only ever lost 5. So that's kind of impressive in and of itself. So this is kind of just our distillery in general. Original building was here, had our original fermenters, and then it just expanded out. We actually have 3 stills now, which is why we have so much capacity. But I like to show just how rapid our expansion is. We've only been producing bourbon for just under 9 years. And we have 750,000 barrels, not including the additional 600,000 that are down at Green River. So rapid expansion. But when I came in, what we learned is that over time, people just bought systems to buy systems that would work for the moment. There was no forethought into how to build out a system that could manage that rapid expansion. We had a lot of capital dollars being invested in that expansion, but less capital dollars being put in behind the scenes into the systems that we need to run the place. So the first thing that myself, our IT group did is we did a system management review to figure out exactly how many systems we actually were using at our sites. Anybody want to take a guess how many we had? 15? Anybody else? 50? 68. 68. Some of which were native. The total number that talked to one another was 0. They don't talk to anything. Our distillery itself, we use 5 systems to do production. That includes writing by hand. Okay, so we have a couple of our people in barreling that they will enter it into 3 systems. They will enter it into Excel, they will enter it into Distillery Solutions, they will enter it into Ignition, and then they will write it down. When we have barrels that come in from off-site, we have serial numbers. They yell across the room to tell them to mark the serial numbers down. They have to write it down. They then use a calculator to calculate the distance or difference to make sure that we don't have doubles, because duplicates in our system is a problem. So what we did was we went through all the systems. We were able to identify 16 that we could get rid of. or that would be obsolete. So we started to mark those off. We then went out and did an RFP for a ERP solution. We looked at 6 to 9 different vendors, vetted them out, had them come in, do a lot of testing, and we ended up choosing Sage X3, mainly because of its manufacturing capabilities, but also because it had WMS built in, and one of the primary focuses of our business is being able to manage barrels, especially with the complexity that 80% of them aren't ours. So we're holding non-value barrels on the books, but they're valued for things like insurance, for example. So it's a very unique partnership. We do the same thing in bottling. We'll bottle for 60 to 80 different customers per year with various sizes from 50 mLs all the way up to 750s, sometimes liters. So we have to have a very robust ERP system to make that work. We are in the 2nd year of it. As I said, we're going live in about 11 months, but I'll talk about that just a little bit more. Third part of our upgrade is that we're looking at enhancing our Salesforce capabilities. Somebody chose to have Salesforce at some point. It was their bright idea. They never implemented it all the way. They just said this would be really cool, and then they left it at that. So we had to go back and review it. Data. We have a lot of data. We have quality data. We have distillation data. We have data that we're collecting out on the floor when we're doing the bottling lines. What is it? Where is it? How's it being stored? How are we using it or how are we not using it? And is it accurate, right? And then last, taking all those things into account, then we wanted to look at how are we going to use automation and AI to enhance our capabilities and put us at the forefront of the industry, okay? The biggest thing for us was to start with streamlining the data. I kind of talked through this one already, but this was a big part of it. Duplication of data. Several of these systems were just obsolete because we were using multiples. One group would use one, so marketing had one, then you'd have your, like the distillery would have another. Each one didn't, and sometimes they weren't even native inside of our system. So they weren't even under our cybersecurity, right? So we got with our CEO and said, hey, we just got to clean all of this up. And that's where we ended up with this one. For Sage, we worked with them, and it is a very unique partnership. The idea that we had is to work with them to build a ERP for the industry. So it is being custom designed in partnership with them so that it will work across any distillery that is in existence. Because we're so unique, the chances that most distilleries will do what we do is probably pretty rare, right? Most distilleries aren't contract distilleries. Most distilleries don't bottle for other people. Most people don't distill for other people. Occasionally, you'll see them sell it. So we build out all those capabilities, and then the Sage team will be able to go out there and package that for the group. Currently, we use Sage 100. Has anybody ever heard of that? It's QuickBooks, essentially. That's what we use to run a $250 million a year business. QuickBooks. It is connected to nothing, right? It's mostly run out of Excel. In the background, we also have distillery solutions. The most common thing I hear about it is the wheel of death. The amount of processing time that it takes. What most people do, our compliance guy, I love talking to him about it, he'll run a report, he'll leave and go for lunch and then come back so he can get his report, right? That's the kind of stuff that we're trying to deal with. That's what we're trying to enhance at this point. Like I said, target go live. If y'all can say prayers, kneel, bow, whatever you need to do in the next little bit for me, that would be awesome, because I'm ready to stop talking about it. Not that I'll ever get to fully stop talking about it, but ready for this to go. It will be a big benefit for us in the long term. For Salesforce, what we decided to do is we revamped Salesforce to make it better fit what our business was. When they initially launched it, they really just used it as a repository for information, whether it was a repository for our distributor information or customer information, and it was just kind of a mess. So we went back through and we said, what do you need? What is it that you all are trying to get out of the system? We started with contract sales, because that is the bulk of our business. Most of our business comes from the contract side because the customers are paying a lot of that money up front. We streamlined it, figured out what objects that they needed inside of Salesforce, figured out what their needs were inside of Salesforce, and how we could automate their processes so they didn't have so much redundancy. How do we take the leads and just directly feed them into Salesforce from a web lead form, right? They were having to answer every single email. And a lot of times it was just bots hitting the email address over and over and over and sending sometimes inappropriate names to us to go follow up with, right? So we were able to streamline most of that and get it so where that they could make it usable. We then looked at what our customers needed. So we have a lot of customer data. Our customers are very interested in what they have on our property. How many barrels do we have? How many bottles do we have? How many finished goods do we have? Where is all of that material at? So we got together with Salesforce, got together with Sage X3 and said, hey, we know our data is in X3 and all this information is ready for our customers. How can we formulate it in a way that makes it safe, easy for them to access, and semi-pretty? Got together, built it in through MuleSoft integration. We're pulling all of that out of Sage X3 into Salesforce so each customer will have their own view. That will go live. Actually, I have a meeting with them tomorrow afternoon to do the final connection, and then it'll be fully live. Our customers will no longer have to email 6 people to figure out how many barrels we have, and it won't take the poor lady with the 500 megabyte Excel file and her gaming laptop, because nothing else will run that Salesforce or that Excel macro, to then figure out exactly how many barrels that they have. We don't have to call the people down the road to figure out where the raw materials are. All of that will be integrated together. It's very exciting for me because I see what some of the folks do on a daily basis. But all we're really doing is connecting how state-of-the-art our distillery is with the background capabilities that we should have been working on the entire time. So we talked a little bit about the integration. What we will end up having once Sage X3 is live, we will actually have it connected to 6 different systems. So Ignition is what we use on the distillery side. It is an automated system. So the only thing that our cook operators really do is control when yeast and when enzymes are put into the bourbon. Now, that can lead to mistakes. We're looking at automating that long term. If you can imagine, just a small change in the temperature will knock out those yeast and those enzymes. Kills the fermentation process, and you basically have a bad batch. So we're trying to look at ways to make that more state-of-the-art. Now that we will have all of this information connected together, we'll be able to formulate better ways to make bourbon. Just a question for the audience. Do we think it's art form or do we think it's science? The art of bourbon making? Or both? I tend to go more science than anything else. There is a mythology to bourbon making that we will never get past. It is wonderful. I love our master distiller. I love our head distiller. They do a great job. They're the ones who ultimately come up with the different mash bills. Our master blender, if you didn't see him on 60 Minutes a couple months ago, he is absolutely wonderful. He is the one who comes up with the unique finishings that we put on bourbon. But the general process is mostly science, right? So what we're looking to do is to take all of that information that we find, that we're collecting, refine it, and then find the better ways to make that bourbon taste good when you pick it up. Some additional things we're looking at, so I'll get more and more into that, but just things we're looking at is ways that we can enhance our consumer data profile so we can better target market to different areas of the country. And then we're looking at some third-party data kind of identification. So what's the best third parties to use as we move forward? I'm going to talk about like automation and AI, what we're doing now. So we do have robotics in a lot of parts of our business. The biggest one's for packing. So we'll use a robot to pack up any of our case goods as they've come across the line. It's been great for us because that was one of our biggest spots for injury. The constant lifting, the constant putting down. Sometimes when you have to stack those boxes so high, you were just going to have some type of injury. So now we have moved them to a different spot of the line, makes it an enhanced process. Additionally, we're looking at doing and have started doing the initial parts of a digital twin. We're looking at digital twins for our lines and then for our property. Partly the reason is for at least the bottling side, because we have so many customers, each bottle is unique in how it has to run across that line. And one of the hardest things for us to do is to identify the change parts that are required to run that bottle. It can take 6 to 8 weeks, which matters a lot when we're trying to be in a bidding process against a competitor. By using digital twins, we would be able to scan those bottles virtually, feed it down the line, and determine exactly, do we have the change parts on site? Or do we need to go purchase it? But we can do it in about a 72-hour turnaround. We're partnering with a group out of Cincinnati to start looking into how we can enhance it. Another thing that we're looking, or robotics-wise, one of the biggest issues we have getting barrels to a rick house is the fact that if you roll them on their side, there's only so many that you can actually fit in a trailer. Nobody's lifting a 500-pound barrel, right? So we buy circus wagons. Circus wagons are automated wagons that they rotate themselves up 3 layers high. It allows us to get about 40% more barrels into a single load. Reduces the number of times that we have to go to the rick house. Also makes the feeding of our automated line much easier. They literally roll straight off onto the line and then they roll right back into them. We only have human interaction once. Speeds up the process, allows us to process up to 850 barrels a day. We have both. Mostly traditional rick houses. Green River has a few palletized, and there's a whole science behind that as well, because it just affects the aging process a little bit. It's part of the reason I'm going to talk about kind of like the sensory side of this. What we're starting to pilot right now is one of the reasons we're doing it is because we want to see that variation. And it's the same thing from floors too. We'll talk a little bit about that, but floor 1 versus floor 7 is very, very different in how they age and what type of flavor it imparts on a barrel. And the fact that we don't rotate them anymore makes it very hard to be able to keep a consistent flavor profile over time when you're having to mix those at various lots on various floors. So I'll talk a little bit about that. One of the things that they did when we started AI, my boss came to me and said, hey, we're going to create an AI committee, and I'd like you to be a part of it. I need you to go out and figure out what this is. So the first thing that they did was send me to NVIDIA's conference in 2024 and said, have at it. Again, you heard my background, right? Can you imagine what that was like for me walking in? It was absurd. And then what was even better, I think is Jeff Hinton, I think is the guy who won the Nobel Prize for AI. He was the first speaker of the day and told everybody in the room that we were going to be dead in 8 years. Great start to a conference. Lead off, just hit it out of the park. The fourth speaker gets up there and he says, if you live to the year 2036, everybody in this room will be 150 years old. It's like, well, that's a great variation. Either I'm dead or I can't retire till I'm 120. Awesome options, right? So we saw a lot of that variation. So we had to come back and figure out exactly what it was. What did we need to do to get into the AI space? And if you can tell, what we decided to do was go back and fix our data. What we learned is it didn't matter how much money we threw at AI. If our data wasn't right, if I couldn't confirm our data, if I didn't have something that truly was a single source of truth, it didn't matter what I threw out there. Whether it be hallucinations, just fake outcomes, it didn't matter. Our data was just going to be bad. So we went back through, and that's when we started. We're doing some AI, and as an example, we use AI to track our TTB reporting. It just double checks to make sure all the numbers line out. It's actually very, very good at that. It was designed by somebody who used to work at TTB, so it works really, really well. But we're only trying to find those small things, the small wins that prove this works, because in our industry, everything's old. They do it the same way, right? So we have to find those small wins to get the buy-in to go for the bigger fish. We do use Copilot. We do have ChatGPT corporate licenses. Our biggest concern, and I know the speaker before me was talking about it, but governance. We have a hard time with governance because of the way our infrastructure was designed. So we've had to basically start back from zero and figure out how we're going to manage all that. So there's only certain ones of us who have access. I designed our AI policy that you have to go through a multi-step process before you even get to touch any of our AI capabilities. You have to sign the policies, the basics, but then you go through training. Then you sit with me, you sit with IT, you sit with somebody else, and we talk about your use case. Is it something that we want you to do or not? Do you understand what information can go into AI or not? Once we get through that process, we'll let you go and actually use some of our capabilities, but until then, we don't let anybody use it. We also decided to do, besides like the AI committee, we kind of have it as a COE now, so more of a center of excellence. That way we can manage projects as they come in. What we saw early on is everybody had an AI project and everybody was talking to vendors. We did not want that. A lot of times they wouldn't include everybody in that conversation. And a lot of times we were duplicating work. Everybody kind of had the same idea, so we had to bring it back and try to prioritize. Same thing with our data. We're getting groups of people together to talk about where your data is. Understand what types of data they are interested in, back to where it's housed, back to how it's layered, how's it being used, how can we put it in a structured environment instead of the unstructured one that we have right now. Anybody got any questions about any of this? I feel like I'm talking very, very, yes, ma'am.
Why does everyone have IT budget?
They technically don't. They just, so our business was so dynamic for so long, and we were moving at such a fast pace that everybody just kind of was given carte blanche to do what they needed to do to get the business done. So what we saw is what I always like to refer to as that startup on steroids. We were moving at the speed of light in what we consider to be the right direction, but a lot of times in the background, we're duplicating work, we're adding too many systems, we're doing what was good for the moment. We have gotten to the point now that has stopped, but as you can see early on, that wasn't that way. So people know where to come now. So if somebody wanted to do something, they will typically come to me or come to IT and say, hey, I have this idea, what do you think? And then we'll go through and vet the whole process. But early on, it was a hard switch to get to that point to say, hey, let's just talk about it. Just talk about it. Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. And with any kind of growing business, there was always going to be those types of growing pains. The way the business was designed was unique from the start. The contract business wasn't really a thing at the time. They built this state-of-the-art distillery that was one of a kind at the time. So there's others that have basically mimicked the exact same kind of thing. They're really doing they're using the exact same systems. It's all kind of similar. But just that growth mindset, it got a little out of control. So we had to kind of bring it back into the center. Good question though, thank you. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So we are currently, man, can y'all see that? Because it's hard for me. Is it just the light or? Okay. So one of the biggest areas that we can gain more knowledge is in what happens out in the rick houses themselves. So if you talk to, and we call them old timers because they're the people that have been around the longest, right? Everybody knows kind of where the sweet spots are in their rick houses. Just, they know. We know that the good juice is going to be on floor 4 at X, Y, or Z, right? What we're working on doing, we're working with some vendors on, and we're even looking at some in-house stuff, is how can we enhance our understanding of that and know what causes those changes in the environment? So we're going to put, and have already put, we have 2 current pilots at BBC. We actually have sensors out at Green River, but we are looking to put sensors in the rick houses that'll track temperature, humidity, airflow, air pressure, alcohol vapors, so that we get a better understanding of how each zone of every floor of our rick house performs. That data we will then overlay over time, because this is the hardest part for this one's the ROI, because it takes 6 years. But we will then take that, overlay it with the data that we have in our ERP system, knowing what mash bill is it, what type of barrel is it, where the corn come from, where the water come from, all of that. You layer those two together, we'll be able to build full profiles of how the evaporation rates are, how does it affect color, how does it affect taste, and then it'll do a better job for us at blending. We make so many barrels that we're building rick houses and then immediately filling them up. And then you can't rotate them. So what we were kind of talking about it before, they used to rotate barrels. So they would take floor 1 up to floor 7. That way it would have a mixed profile. They would take 2 and they'd move it up to 6, or 6 down to 2. We don't have the manpower to move 700,000 barrels over time. It's not going to happen. So how can we know which barrels will work well together so that the Origin series you buy today will taste like the Origin series that you have in the future? This will help us do that. We'll be able to see what our yields are years in advance. We'll know what outside temperatures, how that plays into effect. Anybody have a guess how different the temperature is from floor 1 to floor 7 of a rick house, roughly? 15? It's about 25 to 30. You walk on the first floor, and it's pleasant. You go upstairs, and you're sweating. It is remarkable. Now, the barrels themselves kind of act like batteries. They hold heat over time, because by the time they warm up in the summer, winter's here, it starts to cool down. So they stay relatively consistent, but there's still a difference. Additional things we're looking at is orientation of rick house. Which direction does it turn? Does that play a factor? The ones I've heard of being the most successful are oftentimes on hills. If we know that we do better on hills, we build all of our rick houses on hills, right? Because you get better airflow when it's open to the wind. We have rick houses in the back that are actually sitting up against tree lines. How's that going to affect their aging? We have a couple of rick houses that have windows in it. I can tell you exactly what it's going to taste like. It's going to taste like Texas whiskey, because it's going to be hot. Because when that sun beams in there, it's going to change what the temperature is for all those barrels in the front. But it'll only affect about the first 7 or 8 ricks, right? So we are working with these companies to try to figure out the best way to utilize that data. And it's going to start off with raw data. It's going to start off just there. But the thought is that eventually you take AI, overlay it in here, try to find what outcomes you can get from it. So, like I said, we have 2 currently out in our rick houses now. I would show you the dashboards, but it's proprietary. But it's really, really cool because you actually can see how that temperature changes. The other thing we're looking at doing, I'm a little skeptical, is by taking that alcohol vapor, being able to track leakers. So we lose 1% to 2% a year just because they leak all the way out. It's really hard to find them too. If you can imagine, there's no electricity. You're just hoping that you find it before it's empty. And that's money. That's money for us, or that's money for your customer. So how can we better identify those? I've had a couple people say that they can do it. I got to see it, right? It seems pretty difficult to me, but I'm sure there's algorithms that'll work that way. We talked about the bottling lines to kind of explain what we're hoping to do there. The other part to this that I kind of love, and I think marketing's on board with, if you got a digital twin and you can have that bottle running, you can show the customer what their bottle would look like running down the line. That'd be an easy way to sell. Like, you can see it. But some of the other ways that we can use it, the vibrations of those for each bottle is a little bit different. We'd be able to run them through at various speeds to determine what's the most optimal rate that we can run those bottles through. But then it allows us to better price what we're going to have, because if I have to run it slower, that's time down from the line. I can't run it as fast. That customer, I should charge just a little bit more. If I can run it at speed, if it's just a normal bottle and it just plows through, it costs less per case. The hardest part for us is when people add things to it. So we bottle for a lot of brands, many of which I can't mention just for privacy agreements, but they'll have a horse on top of, not that one, but imagine the horse one on top, right? We can't send that one down, the normal one. We don't do theirs, I promise you. I don't even want that implied, so I should have thought. Winged Victory, how about that? Because we did do that, one of those. So like a Winged Victory on top there. We can't throw that cork down a traditional chute without it getting broken. Blue Run has like little butterflies on every single one of their bottles. Those are applied by hand. See person after person just sit there. And then if they're crooked, it's a lot of fun to watch. There's no way that I could do that. But that's the kind of stuff that we have to do just to satisfy our customers. Another one we're looking at right now, one of the biggest issues that we have from a compliance perspective is with labels. So labeling matters. If you buy the juice from Kentucky, you can label it traditionally as Kentucky bourbon. Now, there's a lot of variation to things, right? So in order for it to be Kentucky bourbon, it has to be 51% corn, has to be aged in Kentucky for at least a year. And then what's the other one? I think it has to be at least 2 years old. But you got to have an age statement at certain points. I think it's at 3. But you have to have certain things in line, right? If somebody buys their juice, and the example I have at the top, which is hard to see, says Kentucky bourbon, but the bourbon's from Indiana. That is a no-no. Once those labels arrive for us on site, we are responsible for the mistake. The labels look identical. The only difference is one says Indiana, one says Kentucky. We okay it, we run it, we have to rerun it for free. So what we were looking at is using scanning a image of it or using the original image that was approved and then running using a digital or using like a camera lens, having an LLM go through and make sure everything's correct. The only issue we run into there's about 12 different things that can change on those bottles between now and then. So we're setting it up and working through now, trying to select check boxes. This change, is it okay? Checkbox. Is this okay? Checkbox. That way we get the human in the loop on the back end to make sure that we're not making a mistake. That one is still in the works. We're still trying to get to that point, but it kind of gives you an idea of some of the things that we're trying to do in simple ways that it doesn't save a ton of money, but it gets folks like me, like our IT department, the foot in the door to work with the people, the operators on the floor to say, oh, that's really cool. What else can you do for me? Because we have a lot of additional ideas of what we can do over time. It's just you have to find those first, proof of concepts to really make that work. All right, I believe that is the last slide I have, and I was a little bit quicker. Does anybody have any questions about any part of the bourbon stuff? I love talking about it, so ask me whatever you want to.
Any samples?
So I get asked that every time. I took the bottle out of my bag this morning that I did get, but no, I didn't. And typically that's because I always run into some kind of issue with compliance. So there's a whole age verification thing. They start asking me a ton of questions, and honestly, I don't want to answer them. So, but yeah, everybody always wants the samples. Yes. I don't know that we were designed exactly like MGP. Our founder, he was pretty eccentric. He had actually a telecommunications background. He wanted to invest in bourbon and nobody would sell it to him. It was because of the amount that he wanted to. So I would say MGP typically has larger volume sales, whereas we'll actually go with people who want to do a 20-barrel run. All the customers are kind of the same to us. The other difference is we actually do grain to glass. So if you came to me today and said, I wanted to develop a bourbon, we could probably get you live in a year to 18 months, as long as you have a brand. We help you with compliance. We will help you to a point with distribution. We will help you select and walk through the blending process. If you want to do blending, we'll take you through and let you try the different mash bills to figure out which one that you want to. And then you need help with bottles. We know all the people that make the bottles. So a little bit different. And we tended to kind of hit that niche that was just below, so that now we can kind of compete with that higher end, some of the larger volume. We're working with vendors. And the reason is that it's still very new. really even to the industry. Now, there are some of the larger players that use it more. But what we're seeing is it varies heavily depending on the brand or the company. Most people are using vendors at this point though. And it's just in part because we don't have the capacity to really hire a bunch. Any other questions? Anybody want to throw fruit at me? Oh.
You talked about a custom run and creating something new. What would be the minimum quantity? So if somebody here wanted to develop something, what do we start?
You could even get one barrel. There's, like we sell individual single barrels and we'll bottle those anyway. But you can get, I've never seen the size that they're unwilling to do. It really depends on what you're trying to do with it. Because single barrels are very popular. So you could come to us and say, hey, I want to make a single barrel and try to market it. And that would be something we could do. We have customers of all sizes right now. So just one barrel would really be it. No problem. Yes.
How does the physical security across your buildings, how does that tie into day-to-day automation process?
We do have access control throughout our facilities for that, but it really doesn't tie into the operations. They kind of operate individually right now until we get X3 up and running. Even then, it won't be based off like our badges, but this will be the first time that we actually are using user logins so that we'll actually know who is inputting all the information. Because right now, it's based off of who's on the shift, and it's not necessarily accurate. Yeah.
Just sort of ground foreman, had a buddy who had worked at Bardstown, and he was like in charge of distillation, whatnot, and he was like, we have these silos, we have all these different types of grain, because we make so many different things, it's like what's going to be in that silo today so we can make that grain, like could automation or AI help with like knowing what grain's coming in because we're making these batches. And he just mentioned that this is obviously before AI, so like I felt for him, which sounds like a challenge.
So there will be some of that helped with MRP when we have Sage X3 because we'll be able to load in our entire schedule. They're pretty good now. It took some time, but now they've developed where if we're going to run, just so everybody knows out there, like a lot of the mash bills are relatively the same. It's not a whole lot of different variation. You're drinking the same stuff. It's just aged differently and somebody put a different label and name on there. So hate to burst your bubble. And half the people that say that they have brands, they don't even have a distillery. They buy it from us. So just so y'all know, I'm not trying to get all up in there, but I mean, in reality, all you really need to do is what I think Mark Stoops even did it in Lexington is he bought into Tar. He bought a defunct brand, brought it back to life. That's what we did with Green River. But now I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so what we do is we actually run them in a row. So if we have like the same mash bill, we'll run them back to back to back to back. Now that has created issues with our ERP system because we like to have work orders per customer. So now we're having to do blanket work orders and then have individualized barrel work orders on the back end so that we can break them apart. But that's how we kind of solve for that. And then MRP will help us in the long term with that. Also, just so you understand, like the DSP part of this, Green River is DSP 10. So it is the 10th oldest distillery in the state of Kentucky. We are DSP 20,037. So it kind of gives you an idea of how many different bourbon brands have existed over time that are either defunct, waiting to be brought to back, sitting on a shelf at one of the larger competitors or players in the market because they can bring them back whenever they feel like. Also kind of tells you how many people are really out there developing bourbon brands. There's a ton that have even popped up since then. So it's a really cool business. Very old school, but like I said, and if anybody ever wanted to come out there, we'll go thief from a barrel. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'll take you out there. Like, we'll go, and just so I can have a little bit during the day. So happy to do it. Love walking through, and I can kind of show you some of the technology that we have as well. Anybody else?
Did you bring any of the barrel that you got from Bardstown Bourbon to share?
Oh, my barrel? So yeah, that one of the perks of our business is that when you start working there, you do get a barrel that is yours. Now you have to work for 5 years. I haven't hit 5 years yet. Jury's still out too. Who knows? I could end up being fired tomorrow. But they, after the run, they will bottle it for you. So you have a choice. You can sell it back to the company or you can have it bottled. We're running about 36 cases per barrel at this moment. So that's 6 per, so 210, 216-ish bottles, and you get to take the barrel home. I'm taking the free alcohol, 100%. If you want to take the cash, that's fine, but I want the alcohol. And it'll have my name on there, which is actually very, very nice. But I think I got a rye, so a little disappointed there, and they won't let you trade them out, but you know, I'll drink it. Yes?
Will you still have to do the physical count?
No. No, so I should have elaborated a little bit. One of the systems that we actually did implement is it'll be a short-term solution because we're looking at some different kind of long-term solutions, whether it's robotics or RFID or something like that to do the inventory counts. But we will have scanning capabilities that we'll be able to do cycle counts. So we got it in all the rick houses now, developed the software. Software is connected to Sage X3. We're actually testing it now. So we'll be able to alleviate that. So my complaining is in vain. We won't have to do it again in theory. Somebody will still have to go out there and do it. It just won't be and I don't know if you've ever seen the distance between rick houses, but this does not fit in this, right? So I'm doing a little bit of this, right? A little too wide for it. Got to make fun of myself. Anybody else? No problem.